morning, everyone. With permission of Scholastic Publishing, I'm continuing to read Charlotte's Web. Chapter 4, Loneliness. The next day was rainy and dark. Rain fell on the roof of the barn and dripped steadily from the eaves. Rain fell in the barnyard and ran in crooked courses down into the lane where thistles and pigweed grew. Rain spattered against Mrs. Zuckerman's kitchen windows and came gushing out of the downspouts. Rain fell on the backs of the sheep as they grazed in the meadow. When the sheep tired of standing in the rain, they walked slowly up the lane into the fold. Rain upset Wilbur's plans. Wilbur had planned to go out this day and dig a new hole in the yard. He had other plans, too. His plans for the day went something like this. Breakfast at 6:30. Skim milk, crust, middlings, bits of donuts, wheat cakes with drops of maple syrup sticking to them, potato skins, leftover custard pudding, and raisins and bits of shredded wheat. Breakfast would be finished at 7. From 7 to 8, Wilbur planned to have a talk with Templeton, the rat that lived under his trough. Talking to Templeton was not the most interesting occupation in the world, but it was better than nothing. From 8 to 9, Wilbur planned to take a nap outdoors in the sun. From 9 to 11, he planned to dig a hole or trench and possibly find something good to eat buried in the dirt. From 11 to 12, he planned to stand and watch flies on the boards, watch bees in the clovers, and watch the swallows in the air. 12 o'clock lunchtime. Middlings, warm water, apple parings, meat gravy, carrot scrappings, meat scraps, stale hominy, and the wrapper off of the package of cheese. Lunch would be over at 1. From 1 to 2, Wilbur planned to sleep. From 2 to 3, he planned to scratch itchy places by rubbing against the fence. From 3 to 4, he planned to stand perfectly still and think of what it would be like to be alive and to wait for Fern. At 4 would come supper: skim milk, provender leftover sandwich with Lurvy's lunchbox, prune skins, a morsels of this, a bit of that, fried potatoes, marmalade, drippings, a little more of this, a little more of that, a piece of baked apple pie, a scrap of upside-down cake. Wilbur had gone to sleep thinking about the plans. He woke at 6 and saw the rain, and it seemed to as though he couldn't bear it. I got everything all beautifully planned out, and it has to go and rain, he said. For a while he stood gloomily indoors. Then he walked to the door and looked out. Drops of rain struck his face. His yard was cold and wet. His trough had an inch of rainwater in it. Templeton was nowhere to be seen. "Are you out there, Templeton?" called Wilbur. There was no answer. Suddenly Wilbur felt lonely and friendless. "One day just like another," he groaned. "I'm very young and I have no real friends here in the barn. It's going to rain all morning and all afternoon, and Fern won't come in such bad weather. Oh, honestly." And Wilbur was beginning to cry for the second time in 2 days. At 6:30, Wilbur heard the banging of the pail. Lurvy was standing outside in the rain, stirring up the breakfast. "Come on, pig," said Lurvy. Wilbur did not budge. Lurvy dumped slops, scraped the pail, and walked away. He noticed something was wrong with the pig. Wilbur didn't want any food. He wanted love. He wanted a friend, someone who would play with him. He mentioned this to the goose, who was sitting quietly in the corner of the sheepfold. "Will you come over and play with me?" she asked. "Sorry, sorry, sorry," said the goose. "I am sitting on my eggs. 8 of them. Got to keep them toasty, oasty, oasty warm. I have to stay right here. I'm no flibberty, ibberty, gibbet. I do not play when there are eggs to hatch. I am expecting goslings." "Well, I didn't think they were expecting woodpeckers," said Wilbur bitterly. Wilbur next tried one of the lambs. "Will you please play with me?" he asked. "Certainly not," said the lamb. "In the first place, I cannot get into your pen. I am not old enough to jump over the fence. In the second place, I am not interested in pigs. Pigs mean less than nothing to me." "What do you mean, less than nothing?" replied Wilbur. "I don't think there is anything such as less than nothing. Nothing is the absolute, the limit of nothingness. It's the lowest you can go in the end of the line. How can someone be less than nothing? If there were something that was less than nothing, then nothing would be nothing. It would be nothing even though it's a very little bit of something. But if nothing is nothing, then nothing has nothing. It is less than." "Oh, be quiet," said the lamb. "Go play by yourself." "I don't play with pigs." Sadly, Wilbur lay down and listened to the rain. He saw the rat climbing down a slanting board. that he used as a stairway. "Will you play with me, Templeton?" asked Wilbur. "Play?" said Templeton, twirling his whiskers. "Play? I hardly know the word." "Well," said Wilbur, "it means to have fun, to frolic, to run and skip and be merry." "I never do those things, if I can avoid them," replied the rat sourly. "I prefer to spend my time eating, gnawing, spying, and hiding. I am a glutton, but not a merrymaker." Here is a picture of the little lamb that's talking to him but won't play. "Right now I'm on my way to your trough to eat your breakfast, since you haven't got sense enough to eat it yourself." And Templeton the rat crept stealthily along the wall and disappeared into a private tunnel that he had dug between the door and the trough in Wilbur's yard. Templeton was a crafty rat and had things pretty much his own way. The tunnel was an example of his skill and cunning. The tunnel enabled him to get from the barn to the hiding place under the pig trough without coming out into the open. He had tunnels and runways all over Mr. Zuckerman's farm, and could get easily from one place to the other without being seen. Usually he slept during the daytime and abroad only after dark. Wilbur watched him disappear into the tunnel. In a moment he saw the rat's sharp nose poke out from the underneath of the wooden trough. Cautiously, Templeton pulled himself up over the edge of the trough. This was almost more than Wilbur could stand on this dreary day, to see his breakfast being eaten by somebody else. He knew Templeton was getting soaked out in the pouring rain, but even that didn't comfort him. Friendless, dejected, and hungry, he threw himself down in the manure and sobbed. Late that afternoon, Lurvy went to Mr. Zuckerman. "I think there's something wrong with that pig of yours. He hasn't touched his food." "Give him 2 spoonfuls of sulphur and a little molasses," said Mr. Zuckerman. Wilbur couldn't believe what was happening to him when Lurvy caught him and forced the medicine down his throat. This was certainly the worst day of his life. He didn't know whether he could endure this awful loneliness any more. Darkness settled over everything. Soon there was only shadows and the noises of the sheep chewing their cud, and occasionally the rattle of a cow chained up overhead. You can imagine Wilbur's surprise when out of the darkness came a small voice. He had never heard it before. It sounded rather thin but pleasant. "Do you want a friend, Wilbur?" it said. "I'll be a friend of yours. I've watched you all day and I like you." "But I can't see you," said Wilbur, jumping to his feet. "Where are you and who are you?" "I'm right up here," said the voice. "Go to sleep. You'll see me in the morning." And there is a picture of Wilbur laying in the manure. And we are going to stop there for today. I will read you some more tomorrow. Have a great afternoon. I hope to see you on Zoom tonight at 6 o'clock.